Hi. So, in our storytelling lessons, we spoke about how to start your story and the various techniques with which we can approach our storyline and plot and genres. And in this video, I'm going to talk about why you should start that novel that you've always been thinking about. And I'm going to give you 5 tips for when you do. Now, I don't need to tell you the importance of books and poetry and writing them because you are passionate enough to sign up for this course and listen to me talk about it in this video. So that is proof enough. But what I want to talk about is why your book will be important. Imagine from today onwards, no new books were going to be released anymore. That wouldn't be ideal, right? Because you cannot set an upper limit on the amount of literature that you can read and experience. The world can never have enough books, enough ideas, and enough metaphors to enjoy, enough stories. That is why your book is important, because it keeps up the constant churning and flowing of creativity that is constant, that is one of the most beautiful constants in this world. So start however you want to. You want to start by writing a blog, you want to start by opening up a Facebook page, do whatever you want, but please do start, because once you set the ball rolling, it chalks out its own path, and I promise you that. So now that you are convinced, and I hope you are, you will begin your novel. So how can I help? So here are my 5 tips for when you do start your novel. My first pointer is write about what you know, because while you are not exactly dictating your readers as to what to feel, you are creating a vessel that collects your readers' emotions. And you must write about a subject that you're entirely sure about. Now, suppose you are me. You are a graduate of computer science, fresh out of college, uh, who writes poetry all the time, and you suddenly think about why don't I, compose a novel from the perspective of a refugee from the Cold War. Now, if you are a historian who has pursued their postdoc in 20th century war studies, then you are more than qualified to do it. Because there are 2 ways with which you can, acquaint yourself with the subject you're working on. One is to actually live through it, write from your own experiences, and the second way is by thorough research. So know your subject, be sure about what you're writing, and make sure you make your story yours. Which brings me to my second point, that is, do not sacrifice on your imagination. Just because you're writing about something you know about, you have to, maintain facts and everything just to make sure that the structure of your story is in place, that there are no loopholes. That doesn't mean that there is no scope for imagination. You may be writing science fiction or fantasy, and even if you're not writing those things, if you're just writing about a girl who lives in the mountains and walks out into the marketplace every day searching for a traveler whom she met, whose name she cannot remember, but who left behind a poem for her. And that voice in that poem was a voice unlike anything she has ever heard before. More or less a very simple, subject to deal with, but you may not have lived through it, but you may have a lot of fodder by your side. You're writing about the mountains. Have you been to the mountains? Then good. Are you writing about being heartbroken? Have you been heartbroken? Have you known someone who has been heartbroken? Know your subject, either in a first-hand experience or second-hand experience, but always leave room for imagination, because that is what makes a writer. Third point is you are your most reliable reader. There is a saying that if it is boring to you, it is boring to your readers. Now, inevitably, when you're writing something, you put a little bit of yourself in it, because you can conduct this experience at home. You know, 5 of your friends who are writers or interested in writing. Make them sit together, tell a story, and ask all 5 of them to write down that exact story. Like, basics, like one day this girl went out into the streets and she saw something, and then this happened and that happened. So the incidents are the exact same incidents, the characters are the same, and then 5 of you come up with a story of a 1.5 pages. Then you read each other's stories. They are completely different. The facts are the same, but the storytelling will inevitably be different because it depends on the writer. So your reader will see through it, and they will understand that, yeah, this has been written by person A, this has been written by person B. And the same way that they see through you, they see through your emotions. So suppose you're writing something and you can't exactly choke, you're choking on inspiration, you're losing your breath. Stop. Don't force words out, because if you're not entirely passionate about it and you write half-heartedly, your readers will see through it. So always be passionate, and you are always vulnerable to your readers, not just not only as the story itself, but as the person that you are. And it is one of the most scariest, yet one of the most beautiful things that you experience as a writer. Which brings me to my fourth point: do not lose your perspective. Like I said, suppose you're writing for a few days now, and then suddenly you feel your storyline is gasping for breath. You don't feel the same bouts of inspiration that you felt at the first place. Take a break. Your story isn't going anywhere. Of course, some of us are on deadlines, that happens. But then if you feel like there is a block coming in, don't ignore it. There are ways to fight it, but trying to push it away and writing no matter what is not the solution. It is true, you can always think yourself out of a writer's block. That is true. I feel so. I don't think that a writer's block is a very overbearing thing, because our minds are always incident to constant churning of ideas, and you will find your inspiration, you will. But sometimes you need to give yourself time to re-energize yourself and to come back with the same amount of passion that you had before. Because again, your readers will see through it. Your readers will see through that, oh, in chapter 7 her voice seems little faltering here and there. She must have been on a strict deadline, she must have been forcing out her words, it must have become a compulsion for her rather than a passion. So do not lose your perspective, be calm. And that brings me to my fifth point, that is, be loyal to your inspiration. We are all very busy people. It is the reality of it. Me, I am a student of computer science. I'm pursuing my master's, and my college schedule is really hectic. And I don't exactly get time to write every day. But inspiration comes every day. And being writers ourselves, we know that we never know when inspiration might strike for us, or whether it's striking every moment of every day. It can happen either way. So what to do? Because suppose you're in class, attending a lecture or a coding, and then suddenly poetry inspiration strikes, and what do? It feels bad, right? Letting it go. My advice to you is, don't let it go. You may not be able to run out of the room and start writing your poem just then and there, but you can start scribbling down, write down these half sentences, these ideas. Now, they don't need to be in perfect constructed sentences, they can just be in fragments, as long as the idea is clear to you and you remember it later on, so that when you do have time, so that when you do come back to it, you actually have a, a memory photograph of your stream of consciousness that was occurring then. And you are vulnerable to the rawness of your ideas that you were having then, and you are able to go back to the time when the inspiration actually struck, so that you can, when you preserve your inspiration at a later time, you can cultivate it. And it's true, tried and tested, trust me. So those are my 5 points. And in conclusion, I would like to end the way I started. That is, please start. Start any way you want. And the first draft will never, or not never, it may not turn out to be the way you expected it to be. Hemingway warned us about it. So he knew what he was talking about. So your first draft may not live up to your expectations, but that is why you're a writer. You are your own critic, you are your own editor, unless after the your novel is done, then official editors and critics come in. But until you are writing, working on your story, you are a one man one woman army, and you are able to formulate and make your story perfect with as much time you need. So please don't worry, there is always time to edit, cut and perfect things. The first time may not always be the most perfect, may not create the most perfect work, which is why we keep writing. Because I know my first book, although it was well received by people, I feel like I have matured more now. My first book was not my zenith, it was my stepping stone up the ladder. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you will be able to tolerate me in the various lessons to come. Start.